If I want a coffee sip, I have to like navigate it's like diffusing a bomb.
Yeah, you can't get up and dance. We can't demonstrate our dance skills.
I can barely get my coffee. It's like slip it around, slip it under the boom arm, past the mic cable, past the headphone cable.
Yeah, you're not going to get up and show us your moves anytime soon. And
no, I'm not.
When I drink a coffee at home, I need a cup that I can reflect with. I'm all about looking out the window when I'm at home drinking coffee, and I'm reflecting.
You look all mysterious.
Well, I'm just pondering, you know what I mean, life.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
But if you were in a movie and somebody was watching this scene of you pondering, would it be like a Hallmark movie, or would it be like whack job in a cabin?
Yeah. If I'm doing both hands, you know what I mean? If I'm like kind of caressing and cradling, that's Hallmark. You know, first like I'm holding by the thing, that's different. This is like, I'm going to go fucking out to the coal mine. I'm going to work. You know what I mean? Or maybe this need to be a thermos or something. But you know.
So this is like work for you.
I'm reflecting. I'm looking out the window and I'm thinking of you and our 887. Shit. We need to greet first.
Hey, buddy. It's good to see you.
Hey, good to see you.
It's good to hear your voice.
It's good to see your face, as always. Look at that face. Look at that face, huh? When he's smiling and giggling.
You're messing with it. What are we talking about today?
So we got to start off with a little housekeeping.
Housekeeping.
This is unusual for us to start off with the housekeeping, but I think it's required because, so we needed a little explanation. The holiday special
episode 6.
Episode 6 was a bit of a debacle.
Stressed me out.
Yeah, me too. So, and the reason why, and I think people need to know this, so in all fairness, people need to understand what happened, because we thought we were going to have, we thought at some point we were going to have like episode, like part 1 and part 2, and we can film them on separate days and we can cover different topics. We would get around to the stuff we missed. But the first one got taken up by all my extra shit and a bunch of other stuff. And then we got to nothing holiday related, really. And then we talked about how we're not going to be able to film another part, even though we are now, but it's not really. So
schedules have shifted around.
Yes.
But yes, it did seem like what we intended to repair. Also, this is a decent segue for me to say, hey, I'd like you to drop in the shorts or something, or even here, just put the whole thing here, because there was no place that didn't fit. But when we realized, or when David told me, Kilo told me offline that we filmed a holiday Christmas special without really talking all that much about the holidays or Christmas or anything, and we just kind of talked about whatever, which is kind of the way it goes.
Wife beaters.
Stuff that was a veer. That was such a veer. I was upset you can watch that episode and watch me, like, that's a genuine reaction. People might think this is like planned or something.
It's one of the most viewed and replayed moments of the episode. when I look at the analytics,
like, what just happened?
It spikes there. Yeah.
What just happened? What kind of Christmas special is this? Right? Like,
yeah.
What? So yeah. So we didn't really stay on topic, which we don't actually. Apparently, we don't know how to do.
So we thought we were going to have more.
It's so
things
hard
to talk about on another part 2 or whatever, and we never. And then it got messed up, and so everything got screwed up. We didn't talk about holiday movies. We didn't talk about holiday music. We didn't talk about traditions, and it was nothing. We talked about Black Friday for 30 minutes. No one gives a shit about Black Friday, and I'm like, why do I even keep this in there? I don't even know why I kept it in there. It's like, I'm giving a history lesson on Black Friday. Why?
I don't think it was that long, but we probably talked about it longer than
yeah, than it needed to be. That's my bad. So, but I got a question for you. Okay? I got a serious question for you.
Oh, good.
Okay. We did take a night and watched a little Netflix, and there was one of those crime documentaries where the husband killed somebody and the wife chooses to stay with him, right? For all these years, now he's in prison and she's still staying by his side. And even though he did some really horrendous stuff, and not just one person, he did like
Can
multiple.
I just feel like we just took a real hard beer
No,
again?
no,
This
but
happened last time too when you
so
went off into the.
but it got me thinking.
You asked me if you could ask me a serious question, and I thought it would
Yes,
maybe be about like my actual life in a relevant context. So,
no,
what
it
is your
is.
question?
Right. So it got me thinking.
Oh, it's relevant to my. Okay, yeah.
Yes, it got me thinking. What if my wife did that and she told me, "Hey, before we were married, I did some shit." Right. So I'm putting a question to you. Is there anything that your wife could tell you now that she did before you were married, before you knew each other, that would make you want to leave her or get a divorce?
Good.
If she said, "Hey, I murdered somebody and I got away with it," does that change your feelings for your wife? If she said, "Hey, I used to have a dick, right? I used to have a dick,
Are we
and
doing
now she
this?
doesn't
Are
have
we
a
doing
dick,"
this? We're veering again.
would you leave? Would you stay with her?
I, I mean, I want to say like, I love. I mean, I do love my wife very much. My wife like changed my life. Like my wife, when we've been together now for I don't know, we're getting close to 20 years.
Uh,
Not married 20 years, but we've been together 20 years. So there's not a lot that can knock that off the table, you know? So she murdered a few people. Was it a murdered member of my family? That would be a twist I probably couldn't accept. It was like, oh, if it was like, oh, you're the Joker to my Batman, like you murdered my parents, I probably would have to like, I think we'd have to call it.
okay, so there's a
But I'd
line.
also in that scenario, I'd also be finding out she was the Joker,
Mm.
and then she'd also be finding out I was Batman, and it would
Ooh.
get really messy fast. It's like there's too many. That's complicated. You can't. Nobody. I don't think many relationships could survive that. Okay, like objectively, if I found out that she had a penis before,
Mhm.
I'd be really surprised because she was like barely 20 when we met. But I mean, I'd be like, okay, well, I'm very satisfied with everything. You know, I'm good, right? Uh,
Okay.
like I don't think because it's like, what's the reality I've known? Like, what if you find out you're adopted and you're like, you're not my real dad, right? That seems like a you're not my real dad story, or you're not my real mom. And then it's like, what? I don't love you anymore. Like you're the person who raised me, took care of me all this time.
Yeah. So yeah,
You
that
know.
was back to like
So like so you had a penis. Like, should I
pick me up.
really care? I don't think so. Don't think I should.
Would
Say?
you ask her questions about said that
Yeah,
the
of
male
course.
figure?
I ask, that's one thing that, you know, that has probably driven my wife nuts is that I ask tons of questions. I have to, when somebody tells me a story, I have to kind of be able to picture it in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I have to
Mm-hmm.
see it. So sometimes I have to ask extra questions that people wouldn't be like necessarily stating. I'd be like, but wait, what happened? Did you do that? Are you saying that? And it works probably well for a podcast because it's like I'm framing things for people who are maybe just listening or just don't know us. But I'm like talking to people like, hey, pretend we've never met. I need to I need to understand all this extra detail, and then that helps it get into my processing or my memory banks. And then
And so
I
you
can
would want details.
I want the
You wouldn't
details.
want to be like, I don't want to know about it. It's okay. It's cool. I'm
I
okay with
mean,
it.
with the penis, I think I'd want details. With the murder, I think I'd probably also want the details. I think, I'm not suggesting that I'm much more interested in penises than murder. Okay, I think I could put that out there. I'm more interested
Yeah.
in penises than
Yeah.
murder.
I'd
I
be
think that's
curious.
safe.
I mean,
I think that's
because
safe.
if it was like, well, Was it bigger than mine? You know what I mean? Like, where are we? I need to know.
Hers?
Yeah, because I would be curious. I
Well,
mean, what else?
are you in some competition? That's a zero competition situation. Like,
No,
who?
what else are you curious
That's like
about?
if the ex, you might ask that about the ex if you were worried about it, like, right? Or if the wife cheated on you with somebody, you might, was it bigger than mine? But like, if the wife had the penis and removed the penis,
Mhm.
would you then be like, was I would never in a billion years think to ask that
Ever?
question.
Really? So
I
what are you curious about that? What is it you're curious to ask that
like,
you were
what
saying?
led you to,
This-
like, what was your experience? How did you recognize, like, what was your journey? How did you get to a point where you were like, I just, I, I, at what age did you feel like you were a woman trapped in a man's body? Like, I wouldn't be like, how big was your cock?
What-
Were you a grower or a shower?
so
Hey, did you ever measure it? I'm sure you measured it. Let's compare stats. And then I'm going to be like, what do I do with that information? Like,
yeah.
do I feel better at the end where I'm like, oh yeah, cool, mine's bigger. Or
Um,
then do I'm like, oh, I feel bad. Yours was bigger than mine. I don't even know.
yeah. So this
I
part's
just would
interesting.
never think to ask this question, David. It opens up a rat's nest of other shit. I don't think I want to. I don't want to
Well,
deal with this.
okay. So I would not like your answer. Like I'm the same way. She would tell me whatever, and I'd be like, like, okay, well, I mean, it'd be different if we had kids and something could come back to impact, oh, mommy could go to jail someday, you know what I mean? And that's going to disrupt
For a big penis?
No, 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 for a murder, let's say, right? So I would want some details. I'm just thinking like, okay, can this come back to haunt us someday? That's all I'd want to know. Did you cover your tracks?
This segment right here could definitely come back to haunt us. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah, I
Especially,
mean,
this is
it's
classic.
haunting me already, and I haven't even gone to bed today.
This is classic.
This is classic. Hold on. I don't think either one of us is talking about how we might remove our penises nor murder somebody, right?
No. So this was all hypothetical, and it got me thinking: would I leave my wife if
I'm so confused right now.
She confided in me something deep and dark? And I thought I wouldn't, because the person I know her to be, I love her for who she is and what I know, and this is pre me, and it's like, okay, would it eat at me a little? Maybe, right? Back to the measurement thing. There was we had a fellow coworker
Like, I introduced that.
back in the day. There was a fellow coworker of mine.
It's amazing. Okay,
Who was male,
Uh,
and then a few years later was not male, had transitioned, and but at the time we never even knew that was something that he was or she was interested in. Like, it was just, like, we knew him as who he was, and then he went through that, and then he sent. I don't know how to refer to he's a she now. So she sent us.
Yeah, you should say
Yeah.
she.
So she sent us pictures in a group chat for pre-surgery of what that thing looked like.
Oh my goodness.
Glorious. It was like, all we could say was like, oh my God, I mean, it was like, I was
What
so
group chat? At work?
Yeah, we had a couple of buddies, I won't name names, but there was a couple of buddies in a group chat, and that thing was thrown out there as like, hey, this is what it was before. And it was
a work buddy dick pic chat?
Later on. We weren't working together anymore at this point. This was later on, after she transitioned, and it was like, well, we were curious, like, well, what was this thing before, before? And it was glorious. I mean, this thing was
the first person to ask that question. What was your...
It was probably me.
Don't you feel a little rude with, now you're now talking to someone who is, has gone through a lot.
She was very forthcoming.
Procedure, psychologically, financially, to do all of that is a massive deal. And now this is a female.
Yeah.
And you guys are asking the female about, like,
she used to get on
her genitalia before the...
Yeah.
Say it again?
We used to have a group that would play Xbox together. So
Okay.
we would be playing games together, and she would jump on, and her voice was different, right? From what we remembered, and when we were working with her, totally
Ye-
different, right?
What about the name? What didn't the name
It was
change?
different. Everything was different. And but so then, you know, one thing leads to another, and it's like, well, hey man, send me a picture of that bad boy
No,
before
not
you,
man.
or you know, or whatever. You know what I mean? Or hey, probably didn't say man, but I'm saying man to you more like not in the headset with the Xbox.
What am I? I'm not post sex change. What
So that thing was glorious. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, and I was like, oh my god, that's
was
I
there
get
like a ruler laying next to it? How do you know how great it was? You know,
it.
sometimes in pictures you can't tell scale, right? Like,
Yeah, this was halfway down the leg. You know what I mean?
so the leg was
It
the
was glorious.
scale. Like
Yeah,
the
yes,
hip to knee
yes,
run was the scale.
yes, and all of us
Wow.
had the same reaction. We were all like, "Oh my god!" Like we were all clapping. I mean, it was like it's just like that thing was wow. You'd be proud.
Clapping.
Thing
Hmm.
was something else. But we can move on.
I mean, think that I don't think if my wife told me, like, by the way, I used to have a penis before we met, that I would be asking her, like, can you send me some pictures of it?
Really,
I don't think I would.
you
I
don't
don't
think it
think
would eat at you over time?
I
Like
don't
get
think
more
I
and more
want to
curious?
see. I think I know her for her in this scenario.
Yeah.
And I'm not really wanting to get more connected to something that I don't know, right? Because that's not like there's no jealousy, right? But if I was like, oh, you used to be a porn star, would I be like, okay, well, what were you in? You know, like what are your videos? Would
Which
I
you know,
I
body count.
I don't know. I'd have a hard time not asking probably. And that deals more with a fundamental, probably like a jealousy, insecurity thing.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just not insecure about the size of the penis.
No, no, I wouldn't be insecure. I would just want to kind of know what it was like to have one.
I
Even though
already know what it's like to
I
have a penis, so
I
I
know
don't
what it's
really
like.
need to ask these questions.
But what was it like for her? You know what I mean?
What if she's like, "Oh, I had like a micro penis." Now you're
Uh,
making her feel bad. Maybe. I don't
no,
know. I can't speak for.
I like how you're curious about the murder details, and you're curious if she was a porn star
Well,
in the body.
that's like because I don't think that something if she had gone through a transition, I'm not expecting her to likely transition again, and I'm not expecting that her transition is going to have any effect on me or our family or our kids. Like that, it's not going to turn into some new thing. It's a thing of the past. But someone who murders somebody, you're wondering, could they murder again? What
Porn
led
star.
to it? What's the motivation?
They were a porn star. You just said you'd be like, okay, I need some
But you're
detail.
mixing
And
granularities here. You're mixing topics. Like the porn star thing is more of a jealousy. Like I would feel like I can't just ignore that without asking questions. I would be really thrown off by that. And I'd be like, okay, what do I, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I would
that's
handle that. I
different.
don't know if I'd be able to be like, oh, okay, baby, cool. What do you want to have for dinner this week? Let's make a menu for.
No, yeah, but still, like you know her to be what she is now, and it doesn't really matter. You know, if she's like, no, no, it doesn't matter. You know, if it was one person in a video or if it was 100 dudes, what does it matter, right? I love you. You know me for what I am now, and I'm not that person anymore. Would that just keep eating at you? Like, oh,
Yeah,
you know, like you'd be like Eyes Wide Shut, a movie that I don't watch.
I never saw that.
Okay, well, I
I
ruined it.
never watched that. It probably because stuff like this does like disturb me. You know, like I don't want to. I don't know. Like, good, but somebody going through an identity type transition and then feeling better off for it, right?
Hmm.
Like in the sense of like, you know, going through, you know, gender reassignment surgery. That that's a different thing. I would be asking more questions like, what was it like for you as a kid going through that? You know, did you feel, and then like, did kids make fun of you? Did you have a hard time because you felt not like, what people expected of you. I would ask about that, but none of that would then make me think, okay, that's gonna have some impact on me in the future. But if the questions were like, okay, were you addicted to sex? Were you having sex for money? Could that be a thing that maybe comes back? Maybe I'm not satisfying that need now. Like, I don't know. Or if it's like, did you murder somebody? Like, what was that about? Was that just like a weekend at Bernie's? You got drunk and like you murdered somebody? Or was that like, you're a psychopath? Or was that like, somebody attacked you and you had to
Oh,
defend yourself? And
but the answer, what if she said, well, yeah, I used to be a psychopath and I had some weird
because you can't
tendencies,
just used to be a psychopath.
but I'm not that person anymore. And I haven't been since we've been together.
Okay, prove to me that you're not a psychopath anymore, though.
How does somebody
We're probably, okay, and to answer your original question, we're probably getting divorced at that point. At the point where she's like, I murdered somebody, I'm like, okay, what happened? She's like, I don't know. I was just fucking bored one weekend and I went on a psychopathic rage and I murdered a few people. So what? I think I probably, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to overlook that. But that sounds kind of like being a psychopath. She's like, well, I'm not a psychopath anymore. Like, okay, I'm calling an attorney the next day.
Mhm. But
That's
versus her
definitely,
breaking down and saying, I did it, it was a mistake, I didn't mean to, and then dragged it under the leaves in the backyard, and then I, whatever, and I ran, and that would be different, right? Like, oh, honey, come here, let me
a
hold you.
self-defense, an accident,
Accident.
like I accidentally ran over a guy. He had a massive penis. He was in the middle of the road. It was terrifying.
Mm.
And I buried him under the leaves on the side of Route 22. Like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'd probably be like, okay.
Do you think you could get away with murder?
Me?
Yep.
No.
Really? You don't think you're clever and smart enough to
No,
plan?
I'm way too nervous and anxious for shit like that. No.
Really? Huh.
No.
Interesting. Most people,
No.
yeah, I could pull that off.
No.
I could figure out how to,
Oh, I talk too much too. Forget it. Like I can't. That's probably that would trip me up. I would be way too nervous. Plus, my brain doesn't work the same way. I forget. I forget how the show even started. I'm pretty sure it wasn't going. I didn't predict it was going this direction. I tell you that.
Oh,
I thought we were doing housekeeping, and then all of a sudden it was like, "Can I ask you a serious question?" And now it's this.
No, but with that, we did the housekeeping of the holiday debacle, but we didn't do the subscriber count, which was 887 people that have subscribed since the last time we did this week.
Is it still current? Can you do a recheck? Because it's been a while.
It's still 887, but we can be excited about this. We said it last time. Hey, if we can get to 750, that would be awesome. Here we are a week later. We're at 887 from 533. So, congratulations. We are ramping. It is ramping up. We are
ramping
2 to 3 an hour, 75-ish a day. So it's
wow, is that right?
Yeah.
I think
really
that excited. It is exciting. It's always a little weird and strange. I don't understand it, but I guess, I mean, I think I'd watch us, listen to us.
We're talking about I mean, we talked.
I'm not sure about
penis.
After this episode.
We talked about penis already in this episode, but we're being very non-vulgar. I think we're being very what's the word? Respectful, right?
I hope so. I don't want to come across as insensitive. I think any transgender stuff, because it was treated so insensitively for so long, you don't have to go that far back in popular culture to be like, oh, these people were the butt of a joke. And everything's a joke. And I think for me, I'm more like, I kind of just try to steer clear because I don't know how to talk about it in a way that might look or sound insensitive or like I'm trying to make it funny. And this is a show for entertainment, right? So it's like, did we plan to talk about this? No. So I hope we're not being disrespectful, but at the same time, I think a lot of people are wondering how to talk about stuff. And there's like a range of how you treat things, right? Like if you're there like just tongue in cheek making a joke, you think it's funny, you know, or if you're actually
That's
talking
not what we're
about
doing.
it. This
Yeah, but
I don't think
these
we
things,
are, no, but I think for so long people actually just handled this by way of dismissal by you know by humor. It's dismissal by like I don't know. It's a way of just kind of almost banishing something into the shadows. And if I was somebody who was closer to that in my personal life, and I would see how that was being discussed all the time, it was like it's just a thing to be the butt of a joke or something funny or something somebody uses to make $20 million a movie on, right? Like I'd be like, this is great. Like this world is pretty rough. I don't want to. How am I ever gonna feel like me? And if you're already in a situation where you don't feel like you're in the right body, right? Like
yeah,
that sounds
this
just
also goes
terrible.
back
It's
to our
terrible.
name, right? The name of our show, right? This it is different. I, mm, like my mom, when my mom was 50, this topic was totally, it was a completely different world. You know what I mean? Now we're I think a lot more sensitive to things and a lot more like understanding of things. You know what I mean? And an older generation was
Yes.
prepared or used to, for
Yes.
sure. Um, we haven't really ever talked about these things on the show, like homosexuality or anything like that, because there's no need really. But I mean, personally, I have no issue with these things at all, none. And I always like try to help people understand from from my point of view. It's kind of like when if I ever had somebody in my life that has an issue with something like that, right? It's very simple to kind of change their thinking or change
You
their
mean
mind.
someone who has like a negative opinion about
Yes.
a group of people or something, right?
Yeah.
Just somebody's marginalizing people. Okay.
Yeah. Because I mean, it's like if whether people, it's the whole like, are you born that way or not? And it's like, well, does it matter? Or one and two, that's kind of like if I asked you, do you prefer blondes, brunettes, or redheads? What do you tell me? What is your preference? I'm asking.
Me?
Yeah. What's your preference? Blonde, brunette, redhead.
I don't think I have a preference. I don't think I've dated any redheads,
Okay.
but I don't think it's because
Mm, okay. Okay. So your wife is
I mean,
blonde.
I wouldn't
I
say
remember.
that that's like, oh yeah, that's my
Here.
type. My default preference, I guess, would be more blonde, probably.
Okay.
And like, and my family's blonde. I think there's something about like, like the familiar. But I'd say most of my uh, partners have been brunettes. So
Okay,
I don't
so
know. It's just all
most people would
whatever.
give a 30-minute answer like that, and they would just say brunette or blonde or redhead, right? But
Are you
I
going to cut it out?
no, but so like for me, it's brunette, right? Inherently, I would say brunette over anything else. But if I
No,
was
that's
to ask,
wrong. It's
oh,
totally blonde. Ugh.
but if I was to ask myself why, why do I prefer brunettes? I
Yeah,
can't tell you why. It doesn't. It
yeah.
was I born that way? You know what I mean? Liking brunettes? Did I learn it as a child somehow, or is it my environment? My mom's brunette, or what? You know what I mean? Like, is it something deep rooted in my childhood that makes me prefer that or have that preference? Does it matter? You know what I mean? Because it's like the thing is it doesn't change. I'm not going to change if I'm attracted to a certain thing. I can't change it. It is what it is. You know what I mean? And so
You
it's
can't
kind of
change
like,
it, but like I think I've also had, but you do evolve in things. Like I never would have. I wouldn't have even if I saw, like, let's say in high school, I saw a girl who was taller than me but beautiful, like otherwise totally my type, or I just can't say I have a type. But if she was taller than me, I almost like didn't even think about it as much. I'd be like, well, never mind, right? But then at some point, I met a girl who was taller than me, and I was just like enamored by her and who she was, but also, how she looked, but also just who she was. And we dated. And, it got weird at times because it was like, it didn't bother me. It bothered me that I knew she wanted somebody taller than her. And so, like, I like I stand on the curb to like kiss her,
Yeah, that's never
or
gonna.
like out in the street.
Yeah.
I don't want to stand on my toes, right? But I'd be like, can you let me walk on the curb, give you a kiss. And I was like, it's probably weirder for her than like, I don't think my ego would be too bruised, but I think it was like, oh, I know this isn't the ideal for her. So I can't get it out of my head that I'm not that.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is if a man is attracted to another man or a woman is attracted to another woman, it is what it is. Like there's no changing that. And you can't ask him why it is, just like you can't ask me why I prefer brunettes. It is what it is. I can't help it. It is what it is. There's no shock therapy that's going to change that from me. There is no, you know what I mean? There's no convincing me otherwise. There's no, trying to train it out of me or beat it out of me or anything like what maybe would have happened a long time ago, and like, okay, like you had some sort of mental illness, right? You had
But
to go
imagine if
see.
somewhere along the way, somebody was like, hey, your attraction to brunettes is problematic.
Right.
What would you do?
I'd fight the power. You know what I mean? That's
Would you
just
fight
it.
the power? Like,
Of
and you
course.
think you would? Like, I mean, come on now.
I mean, it
In the
depends.
situation, I think it's not that you fight the power. Like, what if you were so minoritized by your interests,
Oh yeah,
that it wasn't like safe to fight the power,
you were out and banished and all that. That's a good point.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I'm
right.
just talking about nowadays. I don't understand how people don't understand. You know what I mean? You're free to love who you want to love, be into whatever you want to put rub peanut butter all over your butthole and let it dry, and then go, dip it in whatever you want to do in your own privacy, in your own home, whatever. I don't care. I literally do not care what people do. Whatever. I mean, outside of obviously, I had this conversation with somebody not too long ago, and they said, well, wait a minute. What if they were abusing children? And it's like, okay, there's a line. There's always a line
Oh
that
yeah,
could
of
be
course
crossed.
there's a line.
You know,
Yeah, there's a
it,
line. But
okay.
there's people who are like, oh, if we're permissive about homosexuality or then that means it's just a slippery slope. Now here comes the pedophiles, and we're gonna just make that a. And I'm like, I don't, no. I think we still kind of can understand where those lines are. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna. It's because I had a hot coffee, and now I'm starting to sweat a little.
You're sweating from the
Yeah.
subject matter.
No, but you know what?
Uh,
This goes back to the preference thing, and this is another thing I wanted to ask you before, and I forgot. All these episodes, I've been meaning to ask you certain things that I think I remember. You used to drink and or like Guinness.
oh, I did. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
back around where we were hanging out. I loved Guinness. I wasn't that into beer back then. I was more into cocktails, liquor.
Yeah.
But one of the few beers that I did like in that era was Guinness. Yes.
You got to walk me through this. So I thought I was missing something for the longest time, right? When people are like, "Oh, Guinness, 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 Guinness," and and it's a very popular brand. It's consumed all over the world, right? It's a huge thing. And I thought, okay, there's got to be something to this. And I had my first Guinness, and it was so disgusting to me, and just shockingly bad to me. And I simply cannot understand people who enjoy it or like
How did
it.
you have it? Where did you have it? Like where and what was the
I think
format?
it was like at a Fridays or something. It was like, okay, let me try this. Let me see what the rage is all about, right? And I drank
Okay.
it. I couldn't even get past just the head alone. It just was. It's so bitter and nasty.
What did it
tasting.
taste like to you?
Burnt, nasty beer. Like someone put a cigarette butt out inside of the beer, and then let it get all foamy on top. I mean, it's disgusting to me.
You
And
make
I
me
understand
thirsty.
people have certain, okay, let me ask you then. Do you like black licorice?
No.
Okay, so you like Guinness, but you don't like black licorice. So I was under the assumption there's a link somehow to certain things that are really like, oof, you know what I mean? Like someone likes black licorice, that's a certain type of person. And then maybe that person would also like a Guinness, or very
Well,
strong espresso shots or,
black licorice has a very distinctive flavor, and there are certain. So I was a drinks writer for several years, and that's actually where my interest in beer evolved. I got much more interested in beer from
craft beer.
getting craft beer. You say craft beer, but that's some more modern term. It's just beer. like beer around the world beer, the stylistic variability of beer around the world is way more vast than what we tend to think of domestically as beer, right? And so that old question of like, what do you want, light or dark? Like, there's a lot more to it than that. And so I, I, I was, I came to learn a lot about like what were the flavors that I liked, but it would evolve. It would evolve. I When I first was tasting beers to try to learn about them, I was like, "Yep, tastes like beer. Every beer tastes like beer. Tastes like beer." I couldn't tell you the difference between malt or hop. I didn't know my palate hadn't grown enough to be. It's not like it's refined. It's just I did not know. And it took time to like, oh, I see what this is, and I understand this, and oh my gosh. And there are certain beers along that journey that help you kind of understand, like, wow, beer is not what I thought beer was, right? It's so much more involved. But Guinness was one of those things that was like, oh wow. It's another thing too. People equate dark beer with strength. Guinness must be some heavy, high alcohol beer.
No,
A regular Guinness has lower alcohol content than a Budweiser.
but it's a burnt batch. That's how it started, right? Guinness was an accidental burnt
Oh, I
batch
don't know.
beer.
I actually don't know about that
Yes.
particular history
Yeah,
of
and that
Guinness.
they had to sell it because they couldn't waste a batch of beer. So they
I
ended
don't
up
know. Is that
selling it.
really true?
This is
Is that
true.
really true?
Yeah, and so they sold a burnt batch of beer. These customers liked it, so then it turned into like, well, hey, like let's purposely keep burning the beer, and then these people kept coming back to drink this beer that you couldn't get anywhere else because they were burning the batch, and that's what it tastes like to me: burnt, nasty ass. That's what it tastes like to me. And so if you tell me,
But
like get used to acquire a taste for ass because it has all these notes, right? This ass might have had some, I don't know, some lemonade for lunch, you know what I mean? Versus this one had some milk or whatever.
what did coffee taste like the first time you tasted coffee? Did you try
But
coffee as a kid?
there's a lot of different coffees and there's light
Okay,
roast,
fine. But
roast,
just like your
medium
average
roast.
cup of coffee, when you
It
tried
tasted
to,
like shit. Yeah. And
yes,
then
and then you developed it, there was a ritual around it, and then you started to enjoy it for the net experience, not purely for the flavor. Somewhere your higher thinking brain got involved. The same thing happens with drinks and with food.
So you can acquire a taste for things, right?
Absolutely.
Can you unacquire a taste for things?
Yeah.
Really? So I didn't like broccoli. I'm a kid. I don't like broccoli. Then I get older. I'm like, fuck yeah, broccoli's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, at what point in my life would I ever get to a point where I'm like, I don't like broccoli anymore?
Well, I mean, maybe you were walking home from the grocery store with a big batch of broccoli in your brown paper bag because you're an environmentalist, and some hoodlum runs out, decides, "Give me your wallet," and you're like, "Fuck you! I'm not going to give you my wallet. You don't have. Like, I'm going to hurt you, man." You're like, "You're not. How are you going to hurt me?" You're like, "You don't have a gun." It's like, "I don't need a fucking gun." And he goes in your bag and he takes your broccoli and beats you in the face. Then maybe you don't want to eat broccoli anymore.
You're
Like,
attaching a negative event to it, and
well, you can unacquire it.
But I didn't have an event in my life make me acquire it. I just started to eat it more and more, and then learned to like, hey, this is actually pretty good. And then I learned to like it. But it wasn't like an event happened where somebody made me. I'm going to shove all this brockoli down your mouth until you love it, and then I did. Like
No, I think it's harder to like things through that type of conditioning. It's a lot easier to unlike things through a negative experience than it is to like them.
Yeah. Yeah. So the wine, right? I've never been a big wine drinker, and somebody kind of educated me on wine one time, right? It was actually a bartender. I don't remember what bar I was at, and they were pouring out all these different samples for me from different wines, white, red, like all the different types, and trying to convince me to be a wine drinker or a connoisseur, because I was like the same thing. I'm like, I don't get it. All right, just wine is wine. Red is red, white is white. Like I can't tell you the difference between a Merlot and
tastes like wine.
Right, tastes like wine. But then they started explaining, like, look, this comes from this region of the world. And in this region of the world, they put tobacco in the soil, right? And then they would make me sip it. And they'd say, do you taste tobacco? Like, I need tobacco notes. right? Because I didn't understand the whole note thing and all that. So I would sip it, and then if I sat there long enough, I would think, you know what? I don't know if this is just because he put the power of suggestion, but I would be like, yeah, I think I can taste maybe a little tobacco in this now that you
Yeah.
mentioned it, right? And then this one has some cherry, thing around it.
That's growing. That's called growing your palate. Yeah.
But I still, even when I learned the world that it is, and I understand why people really do enjoy it, I still kind of don't understand it. Even though I've been more educated about it, I don't get it.
Well, that's okay.
Okay,
But you
really,
never really acquired the taste. You just learned more about it. You got more perceptive, but you didn't actually acquire the taste.
yeah,
Now, I used to like red wine a lot. And then I started to get very headachy from drinking red wine.
yeah,
So I've essentially unacquired that taste because, the taste of red wine in general for me is it reminds me of getting a headache now.
yeah. I
The
get
only
headaches.
exceptions I know is like actually going closer to the source. Like when I was in Rome and I
Mm,
had wine there, it was like this is a completely different product.
yeah,
And it was wonderful. I could drink like easily half a bottle of red wine and
it
just
to
be
give you a
like,
headache.
this is wonderful. This is
Mm,
wonderful. Didn't have any of those problems. Or, in France, like, of course you can have wine in France, right? I've always preferred red wine, but I got really put off to it in the States domestically. It made me feel bad, made me feel physically bad. So I kind of unacquired the taste.
It does that for me too. Red wine does that for me. I get a headache every time.
So are you like suggesting that sexuality, like you can unacquire a
No,
taste for?
no, no, no. We've moved away from sex.
Did we though? We kind of transitioned in
Or
this in a
not.
way. I wasn't sure if you were trying to
No, no, no.
surreptitiously
I
make
was.
some other point.
We were talking about
Because
like.
I think that expression about like, born this way,
Mhm.
I think that of course there's multiple pathways to things. I don't think you can make things as black or white. I think many people know from the time that they're very
Mhm.
young, right? But maybe it's because my generation, age, or whatever, but the people that I know, friends, right? Many of them were not, they would not say that they were closeted as they were younger, but they were heterosexual or presenting as heterosexual. Uh, but I've asked them since, like, and they have since come out as homosexual. Like, so were you, like, what was going on? Were you just like, you couldn't talk about it? You couldn't tell anybody? I'm like, I'm sorry if I ever, and back in the day, people were way less sensitive about it. I could have said some off color thing, or like used an expression that would have been hurtful. It's like, I'm sorry if I ever made you feel better, ever said anything like, that's how people were talking back then. And it was shitty, but nobody even thought about it. And, and they were like, no, I wasn't really in that line of thinking then. I was just kind of like, oh, I feel like I might be attracted to this person. Or I really was drawn to somebody, but it felt more like a strong drive toward friendship. I didn't experience it as a sexual drive. And then
Mhm.
it wasn't until I was in my mid to late 20s that I was like, oh, wow. Or some people who were like, no, I had no sense of this whatsoever until the first time I was sexually attracted, to a woman, like female to female. This idea, like born this way, I think, for sure, there's people
Sure.
that's the way that it is. But I think other people, it's like a discovery journey now. And I don't know that all of that is because, well, the culture wasn't allowing them to even consider this, right? Or their families weren't even like, this is an option. Like nobody talked about it. So you don't even consider. And then I know several people, they're like, it wasn't until I met this person that I was like, did it matter that they were female, right? Like woman to woman. It didn't matter that they were female. I was so attracted to this person and I just knew I needed to be with them. It wasn't, it wasn't about that. And that's not a person, that's a person who's been like, had had been heterosexual like their whole lives, right?
But that's not
I think
unlike
this,
being hetero, right? I mean, same thing. I didn't, you find the one, or somebody does it for you all of a sudden.
yeah, this like it's like a type, right? And it's like, oh, I thought my type was this, or I didn't have a type, but now, or I don't think I ever would have been interested in this person or somebody with this look, or maybe, when I was younger, I thought the person had to be younger than me and shorter than me and this, whatever, or like for women, it's often like older than me and taller than me or whatever it is, right? Like whatever it was. And, and then there'd be like a list that becomes the thing, right? And that's not like actually what you're passionate about. That's just like a mental checklist. And then you actually experience like, your heart, right? Going
Yeah.
and like, that was the thing for me growing up. I didn't know any openly gay people when I grew up. Didn't know anybody. And part of that was where in the country I grew up and when I grew up. And then I grew up in northern New Jersey. And then I went to Southern California for college. And right away there were openly gay people like in my dorm. And I was like, oh, and like I'd never met an openly gay person. And then, of course, I was like, hanging out with people. I was like, there's no difference. Like, it's so silly, right? It's funny that we're even having this conversation because I think a lot of people, younger people, they're not even having this conversation.
Right.
It is just what it is. It's not even like there's no transitional state. There's no change in perspective. It's just how it is. And I think but it was like a foreign thing. And then there were also messages in like media and TV, like that it was either it was funny or it was a joke, right? Or like there was something off with the person. You couldn't trust them. Like that was the portrayal. So that infiltrates your way of thinking
so
too. You don't have direct exposure to people.
You came up in a time that it wasn't commonplace like it is now for younger kids, a younger generation. We came up in a different time. But yet you still have a very, I guess, progressive or liberal view on it now. Even though we came up in a different generation, you still look at it more like the younger generation does. So do I, right?
Again, but if I'm honest about it, 50 is the new 30. But you don't just land at 50, right? Like, and it's not. This happened to me this happened to me almost 30 years ago, but still, I wasn't always, anywhere near as open-minded or what you'd call progressive about it.
I will say this, that I do understand if somebody's confused and somebody might be on the fence, whether they are or are not. I went to a gay club, a dance nightclub once, right? It was a bunch of friends, okay? And when they told me, hey, we're going to go out to this club or whatever, like the Rainbow Club, I think is literally what it was called, right? Perfect name for this. But so I was like, okay, what? Why are we going? Why would I go there? Like I'm single at the time. I'm wanting to meet girls, right? Why are we going to this thing? And they were like, no, you don't understand. A bunch of straight women go to these clubs because they can be more free and they don't have to worry.
They can just dance without people like
ogling.
I mean, like
hitting on
everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Just like go have fun. And then in a lot of cases, the people are just able to just have better fun and like maybe even the dancing is better, like.
Right. So they convinced me. So to your point, they were like, oh yeah, so women want to go there in droves, and so you have your pick of the litter because it's like you're a straight guy in this club, right? Where all these women are
fucking it up for everybody, though.
So it convinced me and a buddy that to go, right? And so we went, and it was I was odd at first, but I quickly started to realize. Well, it was after I left this nightclub. One, there were no straight women there. This whole thing was a lie. I mean, we were there all night. There was not a straight woman in the house.
It's just dumb straight guys thinking dumb shit about shit they don't know. Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah. Like
So, okay.
dumb male fantasy shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But whatever. I bought
Right.
into it and I went and I was there and then, I tried to enjoy myself, have a good time, had some drinks, whatever, and the music, But as I was there, and just kind of bellied up to the bar, right? It was unbelievable the amount of ass grabbing, crotch grabbing that was happening while I was standing there. To the point, because they're in their own environment. They're not assuming that I'm a straight guy, right? I'm in their world, right? And so I didn't get mad. I wasn't getting upset every time this happened to me. I was
Sure.
like, oh, okay, it is, they're very aggressive but they're in their own environment, in their own world. And so it's totally understandable. But I got to a point where it was so much that I literally had to put my ass against the back of the bar my ass against the bar and literally just put my hands in front of my crotch and just like literally just kind of like fending off grabs and axe brushes and things, right? Because it was too much. But I left there thinking, man, like if I was kind of like confused or I was a guy that didn't date much growing up, girls didn't pay attention to me much, right? Like I didn't really have, anybody that I went to the dance with, the prom, or anything. Like if I didn't have any of those experiences and somebody took me to this club and this happened, I'm getting so much attention from dudes left and right. They're smiling at me as they walk by. They're buying drinks, handing me drinks, right? And it's like, man, I can see how this would make you think, wow, my ego has been so boosted to a point where I'm like, this is for me. You know what I mean? I feel something I haven't felt in my whole life from women, right? But I'm getting this attention and I can see how somebody might get a little drawn into that and be a little more like, maybe I'm into this because it feels good to be liked or, like it's an ego boost, right? And, or whatever the term is. And so I remember thinking like, that could be a thing where somebody says they were a little confused. They didn't really know. And then this happened to them. Okay. You know what?
I mean, I think eventually that would sort out one way or the other, where somebody might be like, okay, maybe.
Yeah.
And then, spend some time in a relationship and then say, maybe not, or
Not for me. Yeah.
whatever. But like, I think for so long, the idea is like, oh, somebody was confused and lured into something that is, it's somehow creating some irreparable impact on them, right? Like that's the problematic feature, that people would be like, oh, you got lured into a thing and now, but like, let's say somebody went that direction and then came back. They're like, I explored it. Wasn't for me.
It wasn't for me.
Turns out I'm more into, having a heterosexual relationship, but the culture is not such that women can be aggressive and pursue men as much, right? I've had relationships. I think that I've had relationships where it's like, oh, I thought maybe I wanted this type of a partner and, personality wise or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, this was really great. And then I'm like, you know what? That actually wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be. Maybe I wanted to date a comedian. Yeah, I don't know. Right. And then I'm like, I don't know. I'm too insecure. This person's funnier than me. Maybe I don't like that. Maybe I need to be the funny person in the relationship.
If you were funny.
And you're like, oh, I thought this would be great because I'm funny. I'm funny. So of course they want a funny person. But then you're with somebody and you're like, you know what? Funny enough.
Josh, how can anybody be funnier than you?
Not as great as I thought. Oh, it's happened. Oh, yes.
No.
Oh, yes. Oh, God.
You hush your mouth. That's possible. Laura said something to me this week in the car. We were driving, and I don't remember what we were talking about. And she said, you know what? She goes, been there, done that. And I thought, been there, done that. I was like, you know what? I've said this more and more as I've gotten older, right? And it started bringing me back to the name of our show. But the whole been there, done that thing, it's usually based on your age, right? Like I remember when I was younger, someone said, hey, let's go skiing. And I think, fuck yeah, let's go skiing, right? I'm down. Let's go. When are we going? And it's like a 2-hour drive up the mountain. You know what I mean? You got to go rent your shit, right? You got to schlep all that shit from the base thing to some other thing and put that shit on and like and it's expensive, right? And I get car sick if I'm not driving, and then you put me in the back seat
up and down the mountains. Yeah.
Oh God, right? And but when I was younger, I was like, fuck yeah, let's go. Now it's like, like, you know what? I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm like, it's like been there, done that. You know what I mean? I don't have the same. You go to concerts still more than I do. I used to stand in long ass lines. I would wait, hours on a line to see a band that I liked or loved, and I want to get into the show. Now I'll be like, is it going to be cold out? You know what I mean? Am I going to be like, so is there a place to sit that I don't have to put my ass on some dirty concrete? You know what I mean? Because it's like I've been there, done that, right? But then I also don't want to sound like I'm crotchety old 50-year-old. You know what I mean? I can still say, you know what, I'm still willing to drive 30, 45, 50 minutes to get a pizza from my favorite pizza place. You know what I mean? There's a Domino's right here. I can get some pizza in 2 minutes, but I'm still going to drive 35 minutes to get this other pizza that I like. I still do that. But I still, think you get to a point in your life where you're like, you know what, I'm good. Like I've experienced that. I've been through that. I don't need to kill myself to go through that. Like, do you know what I'm talking about? Like, is there anything like that for you?
I mean, I don't know. I think kissing underwater. You ever tried to make out underwater?
Wait, so that's
what?
the first thing that comes to your mind? Been there, done that? Huh? Kissing underwater, been there, done that. That is your...
Well, I just mean like, or like sex on the beach, Sounds great.
Yeah. It's not.
Like, look at the setting. Look at it. Like kissing underwater, be like, oh my God, like, oh wow, how cool, how awesome. Oh man, there's no gravity. Like you're just making out and it's underwater and like, how cool would that be? Right. And it's like, I almost died. It's not good. Try to hold your breath. You realize how much you breathe while you're making out, right? You gotta breathe in and out the nose. What happens when and like you can't breathe and you're underwater? Like there was no snorkeling apparatus for me at the time. And like, I think we both thought, wow, this would be great. Man, it's hard. It's a lot harder than you think. And it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
I can imagine.
When I was like 16 or something, 15, 16. But like, I thought it would be, it seems like super romantic. Be like, oh my God, let's just make out in the pool.
Making love under the water. That shit doesn't work.
Too young for that. We were too young. It was like, let's make out. And nobody could see us. So sneaky. And we almost died.
You're been there, done that.
Almost died. Oh, well, it was sex on the beach, right? It's a lot better in your head, right? Like as a fantasy.
You have had sex on the beach, all sand.
No, I would never have sex on the beach. I don't like the beach.
Okay, so then you haven't been.
I've been to the beach as a child and I didn't like the sand. It was too much. I don't like it. It hurts. The water, you go in the water and then it stings for some reason. I don't know. Not everybody has that, but I never felt good. But as a fantasy, you see movies, like one of the classic, you see it all the time. It's like
the water's washing up and they're making out.
Yeah, they're all making out on the beach. Like I bet that was a miserable shoot.
Oh,
when you, on the last episode, the holiday Christmas special, as I insist on calling it, you had mentioned your time as an extra on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, and you had mentioned Charisma Carpenter.
Yep.
And you were like, do you know who that is? And I'm not great with like pop culture stuff. And I was like, I think I do know who that is. And the picture that came to my mind was not actually, because I looked up Charisma Carpenter to try to see what age she is. And I was like, oh, I remember that person, but it's not who came to my mind when you said the name. So the person that came to my mind was actually Eliza Dushku.
Oh, yeah. She was,
but I think she was also on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Which one? Yes.
Faith
one of
Hope.
those two. And yes. And I guess I got confused and I pictured her. But it's kind of on the topic. Interesting segue. She retired from acting. And she now, she has been working toward, she's got some degree. I think she's getting an additional level of being credentialed, but she works in psychedelic assisted mental health care treatment, right? So, and which is a really interesting topic, but I thought that was I didn't want to let that go. It fit in here bizarrely nicely because we were talking about the mental health tie into next, and like, yeah, she's out there doing that work, which is trying to help people through therapy that involves psychedelics. And there's lots of documentaries that actually show how remarkable these treatments can be for people. I've got my own experience with some stuff like that, and I don't know. Maybe someday I'll get more into detail on it.
Maybe we can have her on the show and we can discuss it.
And it's not because I have some background in like wanting to take, psychedelic substances. I'm super scared and uptight about any kind of recreational drug use, but there is really something to it, and
I am messaging her as we speak.
She's a little younger than the 50 is the new 30, but still, I think that this would be a great topic.
We joke about this a lot, but it doesn't. We could talk about anything with anybody who is even remotely close to being, somewhat of an expert in something. And that could be mental health. It could be anybody. I mean, we joke. Snoop Dogg and Sarah Silverman and Aubrey Plaza.
Did they get back to us yet?
Not yet. But
their people didn't get back either.
No. I'm blaming it on the holidays. You know what I mean? It's a tricky time for everybody.
People are busy. It's busy.
Yeah.
It's crazy right now.
It's
all the presents and the travel.
I get it.
Yeah. Well, I think I hear the music playing.
Go change your shirt. I'll go change my shirt. We'll just keep rolling. I'll just do a whole nother episode right now.
Happy apocalypse, everybody.
Do the intro over again. Turn your shirt inside out. Do the intro over again. All right, man.
I know. It's like Price is Right. I thought we had to film like 6 episodes today. All right. Well, anyway, you can't fake it. This is all live in the moment, right? Live, previously recorded live. Yep.
All right, man.
I will see you. Love you.
Love you too. See you, buddy.
Bye.
Bye.